email from the American Embassy in February 2000 informing you that your visa had been revoked and that you wouldn't be allowed to travel to the United States. Could you tell us a little bit about that for a symposium?
I was supposed to go to the US to open our first solo exhibition there at the Miami-Dade Museum of Art and Design. If you haven't heard about this museum, it's probably reasonable because it's not the most prominent museum in the US. We had other offers, along the East and West Coast, but we chose to do this exhibition because the understanding was that we are going to be at the center of an investigative effort to look at the child detention facility in Homestead, about an hour drive from Miami. And we were already putting together a team that included investigative journalists, human rights people, communities that were affected by the separation of migrants from children. The Homestead is a child detention facility. Even just the term child detention facility is manifesting the degree of horror. And what happened was that day before I was supposed to go, the visa was revoked without any explanation. They said, come to the embassy. I went to the embassy. You know how it is in the American embassy, because you also, you had your J1 visa. You had to go and apply for a US visa. So you go through that process. You speak to all sort of like English accent people at the beginning, the lower level, sort of English accented people. And then at some point it stops and you need to speak to the Americans. And at that moment, I was pulled aside. I was said to wait. The embassy cleared up, and I was in a private interview room with this sort of marine-looking guy who was saying to me that an algorithm flagged me up, that they have concern about the risk I may pose, that my presence in the US might pose to, Homeland Security, and that he does not see on his screen what that risk is or why am I flagged. And he gave me an example. He said, look, it's an algorithmic process. So here's how it works. If you have been in touch with a person that we are after by telephone or email, it may flag you up. If you've been at a place where somebody we're after has been previously to you or is planning to go after you, the system would flag you up. If within your network of communication there is somebody that is in touch with somebody we're after, the system may flag you up. So let's sit here now together, you and I, and try to figure out why the system flagged you up. So basically, the way it was presented to me, and obviously I don't believe a word he's saying to me, is, there is some kind of AI system that, works on correlation and cross-referencing information. And you and I, humble humans, would have to figure out why the AI has flagged me up. Now, that could be a phishing exercise by, that person trying to actually get into the network and try to fish from you, it could have been this, or it could have been that, or what and I thought that if we start that way, if we start giving any information here, it will not end, because every bit of information that you give is essential. Every name that you give is somewhere in a sort of cross-referencing algorithm would allow them to connect it to another bit of information that they have. So I said, look, I'm an investigator. I investigate state crimes. The people I'm in touch with are usually vulnerable, and I do not want to disclose that information. And the interview has ended. And he said, your visa is denied. I got my passport back, and that was it. In the meantime, my wife and children traveled, because we were supposed to go together. My wife and children traveled to the US, and they were detained upon arrival, not in the sort of normal questioning room, but in a sort of quasi-detention room at the embassy, where other people were also handcuffed to the chairs, not them, and were held there for 2 hours, with questions about why I wanted to travel, what my work is, etc.
Have you found out anything more about that algorithm since, or whether there really is an algorithm?
Yes, exactly. I mean, I think this comes to tell us something about this whole sort of digital surveillance issue that we are about. Does it really work? Is it really an algorithm, or is an algorithm becomes a sort of alibi to, make you walk down a kind of a path by which you collaborate with your closest ally, a human, wherever he's sitting on the other side of the glass. He's the person that holds power over your entry or not. But we both are humans, and we need to figure out a system whose intelligence is supposedly beyond us. So it kind of, he was trying to create that moment of solidarity between us, but obviously that did not work. So I don't even know that was an algorithm, or that they had any, there's, since I came back, like saying you got visa denied to the US is like a Rorschach kind of like test. Anyone I say to says, oh, it's because of me, obviously. No, it's because I'm at the at the CIJ.
Yeah, I was
The
banned
board
from
of the CIJ, obviously in touch with you and other friends who are also members of different organizations that are looked at unfavorably by the US. My Palestinian friend said, you know what, you shouldn't hang out with Palestinians. My Iranian friend said, you see, it's like, this is what we always experience. There are all sort of possibilities and rumors, but what we went on doing after that, James, is to take very seriously the issue of, sort of algorithmically inflected cyber surveillance, and take some cases and some investigations on that issue. Obviously, I myself feel myself very privileged and protected. I have both an Israeli citizenship and British. The Israeli one allow me the kind of access across Israel, Palestine that no Palestinian would have. And although I document human rights of Israeli soldiers, police, secret service, or army, I'm very protected. I need to use my privileges to undo my privileges. That's in my home country. Having a British passport also means that I'm to a certain extent protected. This is not the case for many of my colleagues and many of the people I work with, work for across the world, whose visa denial to the US would not be reported even. So again, we need to use the privileges that we have to address the sort of the privilege differential in the world, and we have been working now with communities targeted by cyber weapons across the world. So this is our current project, looking at companies that exercise cyber violence, digital violence, and working with communities from India to Rwanda to Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Palestine. And
we'll be talking quite a bit about that at Symposium. But correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember a couple of years ago you were saying you were planning to use AI in your own work in sorting through masses of digital imagery. Are you still planning to do that? And has all this changed your impression of what AI is and what it can achieve?
No, I was never naive about AI, even when we started using machine learning, it's related to AI.
Hmm.
So we, in any tool that forensic architecture is using, in any investigation, we try to do two things. We use technological tools to investigate, to see into places or to analyze situations that without technology would be very difficult to do. But at the same time, we're looking at the political bias and in the perhaps military history of those technologies themselves. So, for example, when we use satellite imagery to, I don't know, survey human rights violation, again, I'll give you the example of Palestine or Pakistan and drone strikes. We, at the same time, we use them to show what we could see, and at the same time, we're also looking at the politics of satellite imagery. So for example, we were part of a push to actually contest the way in which the American Congress has banned high resolution satellite imagery over Israel. They pixelate the images over Israel and Palestine to 2-meter a pixel so that, entire vehicles and sometimes buildings disappear within a single surface of a single pixel, whereas everywhere else in the world it's like 50 centimeters, 30 centimeters. Since then, it's been, the resolution has increased. But you need to see that satellite imagery is also a kind of, they are you can use it, but you need to be aware of the fact politics is built into it. Where do they go? Over which places they circulate? What resolution they provide? What's the iteration? What bandwidth are existing in there? And all those are seemingly technical or technological questions that have politics behind them. And so with artificial intelligence, we use now, when we work now with we worked last summer with the social movements in Hong Kong and in Chile, and obviously in the US, we just released a big story about patterns, systematic and widespread nature of race-based violence in the US. We need to sieve through not the kind of the classic OSI way, 6-7 videos that you triangulate and locate on a satellite image, but 2000 in a demonstration. The images, the videos themselves are no longer 10 to 15 seconds long, but they're actually Facebook Live, streaming of 2 hours sometimes of a protest. So you have enormous amount of material. The kind of traditional open source investigation of online material can no longer rely on purely human intelligence. You need to network, and you need to bring about into the workflow machine learning to actually flag out where there are shots. So you filter through hundreds of hours of video, and you say wherever there's a shot, flag it up for the investigator to take a look at it, or whenever you see that particular vehicle, or whenever you see that particular munition or that particular tear gas canister. And we started that process when we were investigating the deputy, the vice president of the board of the Whitney Biennale, when in fact imagine you're invited to show at the Whitney Biennale, we are investigators, but sometimes invited to show as artists. We're invited to show at the Whitney, and what we wanted to investigate was not something else, but what's happening at the Whitney. And that member of the board was an owner of a company that owned and manufactured tear gas munition, and we wanted to know where he sells the tear gas munition to. So we actually created what we call synthetic models, 3D models that generated a big training set. It allowed us to train classifiers, machine vision classifiers, to find within millions of images those those these munitions are appearing. Sometimes it's successful, it's still under development, but at the same time, by doing that, you understand the processes of machine learning better. And this is something that we call introspection. So introspection is allowing us to shed a little bit of light into otherwise obscured and unaccounted computational processes that are happening within the artificial intelligence system simply through use and feedback.
Eyal, does that also suggest that the era of the kind of amateur open source investigator, the kind of idiot savant who just happens to be very good at intuiting images, that might come to an end then because of machine learning?
No, machine learning is never going to do all the work in the workflow. There's always going to be place for intuition, for the nose of a good detective. But it's definitely changing. It's not what it used to be. So, open source investigation is of the kind we are used to in the work of Bellingcat and others. And also our work is when you are able to actually find in 5, 6 different platforms, a limited number of videos, you sync them up, you geolocate them, you see how they intersect, you see what you can see, and you see what you cannot see, right? You see what's left out of the frame. When you have a protest in Hong Kong in which you have, 400 cameras, Facebook Live broadcasting, at a time, you can't do that anymore. So you need to evolve. That system needs to evolve. That system is very much reflecting a technological stage that is at the beginning of the, sort of like social media and smartphone revolution, if you like. That obviously, that period is almost coextensive with the post-Arab Spring period, so very much associated with investigations in that part of the world, in Palestine and in Syria, in Iraq, and in other places. Now, we're seeing things happening in the US, in Chile, in Hong Kong, where the bandwidth is much wider. The number of apparatus is much bigger, and we need to account for that.
Just to come back to the question of your ban then, I mean, you're not the only person, even at conference, to have been banned from America. Another person whose work you might know of, Ayman Al-Tamimi, he's still banned from America. He's an independent researcher on Islamism. And I wonder whether you wouldn't call yourself a journalist, to the best of my knowledge, you'd call yourself an investigator. Do you feel, certainly Ayman is someone who's an independent researcher and who feels maybe that they lack the support of journalism organizations because they don't fall into the category of traditional journalists. Now, you've got several NGOs supporting you, but did you feel that you lacked something because of any lack of journalistic protection?
No, I think I actually was very much supported and am still very much supported by ACLU in the US, by Amnesty US, and many organizations, including Goldsmiths here in the UK. So again, I feel very privileged, and I feel that I wish only that other people that are denied entry to the US would have that level of privilege and would have access to what I have access to. It hasn't helped. I mean, I still, I thought initially we need President Sanders to fix it up. That's not going to happen. So I'm here in the meantime. I don't think I'm going anywhere in the US.
Do you have any kind of update?
No, I have only, that it's not happening.
Do you have an American lawyer?
I am advised by ACLU, but there is no legal remedy at this stage that I am. We are planning various, there's at a later stage, we might do various things for public knowledge and accountability over that issue. But that is it. I mean, I did, the exhibition that I have went to open suffered from it. That project that I was supposed to do or to lead on Homestead has not taken place. And the museum itself has actually started removing all sort of so-called controversial text from the wall and from the website. So it seems to me that they were also under pressure after that.
Thank you very much, Eyal Weizman.